Tennessee football, the Johnny Majors Show. Action coverage of the Volunteers and other teams in the SEC with the coach of the University of Tennessee, Johnny Majors, and the voice of the Vols, John Ward.
Over 86,000, right at 87,000, jammed Neyland Stadium to see the first ever visit of Notre Dame to Tennessee. And the enthusiasm of the crowd carried over to the enthusiasm of the team and still to the enthusiasm of its coach as Tennessee wins over Notre Dame 40-18.
John, you're exactly right. I think we ought to have some fun here tonight. I thought you were much too serious last week, and I didn't appreciate it at all. This is my Irish shillelagh. And unless you have more fun tonight than you had last weekend, I don't want to be a part of your program anymore.
That wasn't in the script at all. That wasn't in the script. How did you get that in here?
Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Junk Be Gone, Phoenix Conversions.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. This is our tribute to Tennessee legend Johnny Majors. All 90 minutes will be dedicated to Coach Majors. We have former players here. We have some media guys who covered him and knew him. And the reason we opened with that clip from the Johnny Majors Show, November 10th, 1979. Back then they typed it the night of the game. So that was after Tennessee had beaten Notre Dame, first time they'd ever beaten Notre Dame, first time they'd ever played them here in Neyland Stadium. Beat them 40-18. But the reason we show that clip, if we can go to the studio shot here, looking down at us here, that was recorded right where Jimmy and Mike are seated. John Majors was seated about where you are, Ward just to his left. So this studio used to host the Johnny Majors Show in that day. A little bit of history. So I just thought that's a cool shot to show to start our program with as we get going. Lots of stuff like that in today's show. This first segment is brought to you by Junk Be Gone. Whatever you need, 15-yard driveway dumpster, they've got those. You can fill it, they take it away. They do shredding for your business, for your company, or if you need one of their two-man teams to come and carry off your larger items. Heck, they even do demolition. Junk Be Gone, that's the crew I always use. I used them just recently for my spring cleaning. Give them a call, Junk Be Gone. All right, I want to welcome in the first round of panelists we have today. Two guys who knew Coach Majors well and covered him for years and years. That is Jimmy Hyams from right here, WNML, AM and FM. And then right down there, longtime sports writer Mike Strange. And gentlemen, thanks for being here. Simply want to start by saying, for those who remember it, in 1990, Tennessee put out a tape called 100 Years of Volunteers. It's 2020. That makes it 130 years of volunteers this year. I can't believe it's 30 years down the road. But in that 30 years, since that first season in 1891 until now, you can trace Tennessee football program basically through three men. 96 years of that history through three men. And let's go ahead and show folks. 1891 was the first season. Robert Neyland arrived as an assistant coach in 1925. Then his legacy went on. Majors arrived in 53 as a player. Neyland, 62, passed away. Fulmer arrived as a player in 68, and now he's athletic director, so he takes it forward. Majors passes away in 2020. Neyland, 37 years. Majors was a presence at this program, 67 years, whether he was player, assistant, coach, legend, elder statesman, and Fulmer, 52 years as of today. Gentlemen, just talk to me about the iconic Mount Rushmore type legacy that John Majors leaves on the University of Tennessee football program.
John, there have been several players that had a great impact on Tennessee football, and there have been several coaches that have had a great impact on Tennessee football, but nobody did both. Nobody had as great of an impact as a combination player and coach at Tennessee as John Majors did. And when you think about it, when he became a star player at Tennessee, the previous 2 years before his junior year, Tennessee had lost a combined 10 games. Then when he came back as a coach, the previous 2 years before he was a coach, Tennessee had lost a combined 10 games. And he kind of rebuilt them a little bit as a player and as a coach. It took him a while as a coach to get there, but I thought that impact was remarkable. And when you talk about the lasting impression of Majors, we had him on our show for several years to be a guest. And we would go to remotes, and it was unbelievable the amount of people that would show up to see John Majors. It might have been older folks, younger folks, men, women, boys, girls. He always stayed to visit with them. He always stayed to sign autographs with them. He was an incredibly popular man, even later in his years.
And he was, what I would say, I covered him from 84 through 92 and then got to, spend some time with him when he came back to Knoxville here in the later years. And he's just one of the most interesting people you would meet, whether coaching or in any walk of life, but especially in coaching, because he had so many outside interests. He was so interested in history and travel and music. He loved the symphony. I remember in the 1980s going down to the Tennessee Theater to see some sort of a new age music show, and by golly, there was Johnny and Mary Lynn at that show too. And he just loved to talk to you about so many of those things. And Jimmy, I know you remember this, as a media guy covering him, he was so interesting. Whether sometimes you could call him in those days, you could actually call a coach and talk to him on the phone, but sometimes he'd call you, and then you'd have a long conversation on the phone, and then he'd say his piece, and then in about 10 minutes the phone's going to ring again, and you're just going to pick it up, and it's his secretary. Mike, Coach Majors had something to
add. Yeah. And one time I had called him. I said, I need to talk to you after practice, and so I called him after practice. He said, you better keep it quick because I'm at the symphony. I said, you're at the what? He said, I'm at the symphony. So to your point, he did have vast interest. He would go to plays in New York. He was very well-rounded historian. He liked that.
You don't hear the term Renaissance man much anymore, but it fit him. He also had a very playful side. Now part of this is it was a different day and age. Coaches are more guarded now. There's more media, so they just don't do things. But I recall I first started working at WBIR down the street, and Bob Kessling was over there for years and years and years, now the voice of the Vols, and he would do these April Fool's gags. And he would do the Bowl Brothers, where he and Gene Patterson or Chip Carter and Ted Hall would dress up like the Blues Brothers, but they'd cover a bowl game. There was one where they went to Coach Majors' office, and the gag was he didn't want to see them. So they Kessling caught Coach Majors into the shot as they're looking in his office and they can't find him, and it goes wide and you see Majors hiding behind a door. Trying to think about a coach doing that today. You just don't see these guys let their hair down, so to speak, and he was a guy who would do that. It's funny, I'm going to talk about this a little later in the show, but all week I've gotten emails from people saying, I knew him when he was coach. He's the kindest guy I ever knew. I knew him when he was a player. I had an email from someone this week that said, I was a freshman when he was a senior star at Tennessee, and I remember I worshiped the guy, and I said, hello, Johnny, and he spoke to me like he knew me. And I got dozens of emails from people like that, just how outgoing and friendly he could be.
If I could add one more thing on this segment, we're honoring him as a Tennessee guy, but I had a chance to go up to Pittsburgh in 2010, I think, and do a story of Johnny Majors in Pittsburgh, and he is revered. He is a hero in Pittsburgh also.
A hero at Iowa State as well. They have, I think it's their practice facility there is named for Johnny Majors.
Yeah, at the downtown Pittsburgh Athletic Club, I think, there's the John Majors room and a lot of memorabilia. So you talk about, we'll get into this later, talk about building a program from nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go ahead and tell you once again what we got coming up. Let's put this up. It is just a tribute to Majors today. His days as a player we'll talk about, his days as a coach, his greatest wins at Tennessee. We're going to have some old clips. We're going to have videos gathered from all over. My apologies if we've accidentally stolen any videos or photos. It happens. At least it's for a good cause. We've even got some new old newsreel footage that I guarantee no one has seen. 64 years old, and it is high quality stuff. So if you've never seen Majors the player at his best, you will later today. All right, our first two VFLs will join us in the next segment to talk about the man that recruited them and coached them. Come on back on the Sports Source.